As the title of today's McTaggart Attack Podcast suggests, Dabo Swinney is the worst, or he might be the worst. For those of you that don't know who Dabo Swinney is, he is the head football coach at Clemson University, the Clemson Tigers, who've been to the national championship game many times the past couple years. I think they've won at least two or three national titles. He's the best. He's the coach of the best team in the Atlantic Coast Conference for at least the past 6 or 7 years. Yeah. 6 or 7 years. He's the best. Absolutely. Not taking anything away from his skills as a football coach. He does a great job at recruiting. He constantly reloads the team every year, to which they're always competitive, and those are great characteristics, but based on recent comments and comments that he's made in the past, he's really just the worst. And he's the worst because he should really just stick to what he knows. What was it? A few years ago, he gave his thoughts on the Colin Kaepernick situation. The Colin Kaepernick situation where he was kneeling for the anthem. He gave his thoughts on that. They were not in favor of Colin Kaepernick, obviously. And he's recently, let's get to the recent stuff. The reason why we're doing a McTaggart Attack podcast today. The reason why this episode is dedicated to Dabo Swinney is because we're in the middle of a virus pandemic right now, and COVID-19 testing and things like that. And he made some remarks about Florida State University. Why would he do that? Because, well, they were supposed to be playing a game back on Saturday, November, was it, what day fuck was it in November? Why the hell can't I remember that? Where the hell is the phone so I can tell when the hell? Okay, because I'm not recording the podcast on the phone anymore, so we don't have to worry about pulling up the phone. But I'm pulling up my phone to see exactly when that game was scheduled. It was the 21st. I knew it was the 21st, November 21st. They were supposed to play the Florida State Seminoles, my favorite team, my alma mater, putting that out there, just for however you want to think about it, since you know what the title of the podcast episode is. Dabo Swinney being the worst. And from what I've read, from what I've seen in the reports, here's what happened, and then I'll tell you my opinion on all of this, even though you probably already know my opinion on all of this. Last week, a few days, early last week, one of the offensive linemen for Clemson, I don't want to, if those of you that don't know football, I don't want to explain all of the fucking positions and the history of the game. Just take my fucking word for it, what the hell his position is. Had symptoms, COVID-19 symptoms, and he was practicing with the team. He was around the team. I don't think he had been quarantined at all in any type of situation. And then Friday, the day before the game, he tested positive, the player did. But they brought the player with them to Florida State. I believe they took buses to the game, because I think it's only like a 6 or 7 hour bus ride, whatever. I think they took a bus. I might be wrong about that. My point is, they get to Tallahassee, Florida, the home of Florida State. And the day of the game, the morning of the game, it was determined that they had brought a player who had tested positive for COVID with them on a bus to the game. He had just tested positive the day before. There's no way we're playing this game today. Has nothing to do with the fact that would if Clemson had probably won? Yes, of course they did. But that's not why they canceled the game. That's not why they postponed the game. They postponed the game because they had a player test positive the day before who had symptoms the whole week. The whole week he had symptoms. So consequently, he probably had COVID the whole flippin' week. Practicing with his teammates. We don't know if they've tested or anything. We're not sure. I haven't heard anything about it. This is Wednesday after, and I haven't heard anything about any Clemson players testing positive or anything like that. But whatever. That's not the fucking point. The whole week. So there could have been players who had tested positive, and then they go ahead and play Florida State, and Florida State players would probably get infected. That's the last fucking thing they want is for their players to get infected with a virus when they're trying to be careful about it. The coach, Mike Norvell, the head football coach, who deserves a pass for this year, by the way. I'm just putting it out there. They barely had a preseason. They barely had an off season because of COVID. So, I think any college football coach who was hired for this year gets a pass for next year, no matter how badly they did this season. Anyway. But there's protocols in place. And the ACC postponed the game. They said, hey, nope, we're not doing the game. Nope, not going to do it. And I think it's going to probably happen in December. And then Dabo, I think, was interviewed the next day or something like that. And he was not happy about it. He made some comments about Florida State, blaming them. Not blaming the players because they knew they wanted to play, not blaming the coaches, because they knew they wanted to coach, but blaming the administrators. The Florida State administrators did not want to play the game because they were scared, basically is what Dabo Swinney said, the gist of his conversation. To paraphrase him. No, they didn't want to play because we're in the middle of a big health crisis right now. We're in the middle of a virus pandemic right now. And you brought a player who definitely tested positive. And you may have other players who were going to test positive too. And then you play against Florida State and all those players would get positive. So what the hell is that? Then he makes some sort of snide remark, I think either that day or the next day, saying, hey, if they want to play this game, they're going to have to come up here to Clemson or we'll have to go down there to Tallahassee, but if we do that again, they're going to have to pay us $300,000. Seriously? Seriously. First of all, Dabo makes $9.3 million a year, and he's complaining about money. If he cares so much about money, maybe he should give some of his salary back to Clemson, since he cares about money so much. Or maybe he does care about money so much that he makes sure he makes almost $10 million a year. But he's just asinine, stupid comments like that. And he's said other stupid things as well throughout the years. It's like he's a football coach. He should just stick to playing football. If there's a virus pandemic, I didn't know that he was an infectious disease expert. Probably didn't think COVID-19 was a big deal, even though we've had 270,000 people die because of this virus in this country alone. He probably doesn't think that COVID is that big of a deal. He had his starting quarterback test positive for COVID. He probably doesn't think COVID is that big of a deal. You should just stick to coaching football. And if they're told, hey, because of the COVID-19 and you had a player who just tested positive yesterday, there's no way we're playing this game this weekend, Dabo. But no, he could have said the right things. He could have said the nice things, but he didn't. He just trashed his opponent, thinking that they were too fucking scared to play against him. I'll tell you what, when they do play in December, I would hope that they pissed off Florida State so much that they're gonna play really hard and hopefully win that game and upset Dabo and his precious little Tigers. Just stupid. Just stick to football, Dabo. Stick to talking about football, Dabo, because that's all you know how to do. Don't talk about racism or Black Lives Matter and stuff like that, because you're on the wrong side of history and that already. Don't say anything about a virus pandemic because you're not an infectious disease expert. In fact, nobody should really give their opinions on a fucking virus pandemic or anything like that. But still, even especially a football coach who, yes, he does a great job. He's a great football coach, but that's it. That doesn't make him an expert on all things. You just shut up. You just stick his head out of his ass and just stick to football and stop thinking that he's the greatest person that ever lived. It's pathetic. Look up. I'm not going to rattle through all of the stupid ass things he's said this year alone. I mean, there was some stuff where he was upset that his players were given the day off to go vote. Again, remove thy head from thy ass, you pretentious piece of shit. Dabo Swinney is the worst. Probably. And that's the bottom line. If you smell what the McTaggart Attack Podcast is cooking.